Welcome back, everyone. We have successfully concluded 4 of our 5 budget work session meetings to review the 2022 county budget requests. We'll now begin our final budget work session here tonight. And this should prove to be just a blockbuster evening for local government in Monroe County. A lot going on, not only with us, and our budgets, but also over with city government. So the fun will start at 6:30 over there. I know we're all interested in that and seeing what's going to happen. So we'll just see what happens, and hopefully we can make part of that meeting once we get done here tonight. So it is 5:02 p.m. on Wednesday, September 15th. We are called to order. Let's do a roll call of council members present. Then we'll get started with our last round of budget reviews. Council members, please indicate by voice that you're present as I call the roll. Council member Deckard, and again for the moment is not present. Council member Hawk.
Present.
Council member Iverson.
Here.
Council member McKim.
Here.
Council member Munson.
Here.
Councilmember Wiltz.
Here.
Great. So we have a quorum. Let's get started. Here's what we'll be looking at for tonight. So first on the agenda will be the Health Department, which includes 4 budgets for review. We'll then review the 4 budgets presented by the Convention Center. We'll also have budgets to review for the County Fair Board, the Planning Department, the Council Office, the Monroe County Emergency Dispatch, and we'll then consider the Public Safety Answering Point Local Income Tax Interlocal Appropriation. Okay, that's a mouthful. And then once we're done with that, we'll wrap things up with a final budget discussion before we adjourn and tune into that very important meeting going on with the City Council tonight. So another busy schedule ahead of us here for this final budget work session. All right, before we get to the requests, let's check with our council administrator, Kim Schell, and see if we have any quick updates for the council that she'd like to share with us. Ms. Schell, do you have anything for us tonight?
Oops. Council, we only made one change last night, which was for the legal department, and I had already incorporated that into the general fund. So there is no changes to anything with regards to the draft 4B or anything to that effect.
Got it. Okay, it looks like Mr. McKim has his hand up. Yes, sir.
Yes, I was just thinking, Ms. Schell, are you able to display still that 4B spreadsheet?
Yes, I am.
I wanted to just kind of raise an issue that, not to discuss it in detail now, but that we might want to talk about at the end of the day today, and that is the what's called the Juvenile Per Diems Fund, 4093. You know, I know this fund has gone through a lot of permutations over the years, but and we've confirmed that the current thank you very much. That the current ordinance that established this fund establishes it as a non-reverting fund that the per diem revenues go into, but specify that any lawful county expenses that could go into county general can be spent out of this fund. And you know, I know at one point we were saving up for example, for the building that we built for YSB, and that mission has been accomplished. And so what's in this fund right now, if you look, is a cash balance of over $1 million with only a $300,000 appropriation, which is for juvenile detention. And if we look at this, so this draft 4B that Kim helped put together, we don't even have any revenue in it at all. So even without any revenue, can you go down to the very bottom, please? Yep. This fund has a 238% operating balance. That means we have a lot of idle money sitting in this fund that could be used, that we could move other expenses, probably non-salary expenses, that we might prefer to pay for out of cash that we've already accumulated in this fund. So I think we can come back to this discussion at the end. I have some thoughts on how we might want to handle it in the short run versus the longer run. But I think everybody should keep in mind that this fund has a substantial amount of cash that is sitting there doing nothing right now. Yeah, and I appreciate that information there. That's great. And I think probably what's on the back of all of our minds, and certainly mine, is this may be a way that we can make some substantial progress on those WISC recommendations as well too. So something to think about for sure, and appreciate that information. Do we have any questions or additional commentary on this? Council? Yes, Ms. Hawk.
Yes, I think in addition to which, when I was going over this and could see that no revenue has been included or projected for this year, you wonder where has it been included somehow in the miscellaneous? Is it sitting there in cash and included in or miscellaneous revenue somehow? Because we don't want to double budget it. But from the get-go, I've said that for a long time, the state has said we're not allowed to have 2 rainy day funds. And I believe they will look at this and say, look, just like they did with that election fund when we were trying to do that. I mean, we were trying to do the right thing, but that doesn't mean it was the right thing. And I think when they take a look at this and say, look, you're sitting there on $1 million and you didn't include that in your, in your cash or, in your 16-line statement. So I think we have to address this at some point in time, but right now I just think we have to know it's the money sitting there to help us. Mm-hmm. And remember, not every department has the ability to collect additional revenue, but just like the building department, they collect revenue, but that doesn't stay in the building department. It goes right over there in the general fund. It's the same way. So just because your department happens to be a collector or a revenue generator does not mean you're the department that spends it.
Thank you. Ms. Munson.
Yes, thank you. I recall from previous budget hearings when we asked about expenditures from this fund that Judge Galvin said there were restrictions on what we could use this for. And I believe one of those concerned juvenile detention. Does anybody else remember that?
Ms. Hawk?
Yes, this is exactly where all of this came from, because a few years ago, we were really short of money trying to make the budget work. And so we were trying to figure out a way to move that detention into some way to pay for that. We were trying to budget $300,000 for detention. We were not allowed to move it into any kind of new revenue source because detention, the rules are we couldn't grow money to pay for that detention as any kind of revenue source. So that's when I said we should move it to this. And there were many people through the courts and the Juvenile Center who felt that we should not get into this. They really believed that was their revenue. And I understand that. However, that is not what the ordinance says. It says it's to be used for any general purpose whatsoever. And so from then on, we started putting detention in there. And the need of the juvenile shelter has been taken care of. They have a lot of revenue, and this is needed for general expenses.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, well, seeing none, I think we can jump right into the budget request now. And first up is our health department.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 1159 -0000 General Fund Health with $1,418,283 in personnel, $25,850 in supplies, $305,697 in capital. I'm sorry, in services, $15,300 in capital, for a total budget of $1,765,130.
Second.
All right, welcome to Penny Caudle, County Health Administrator, who will be presenting the budget this evening. And also want to note for the record, I did see that Mr. Deckard, Councilman Deckard has joined. He is here with us as well too. Ms. Caudle, whenever you are ready, feel free to take it away.
Good evening, and thank you. I will try to keep this as short and clear as possible. If you look at our budget, our primary changes for the 2022 budget do come in the personnel lines. Much of that has really kind of been discussions we've had this current year. So there are 2 new positions that were approved this year. Those are both manager positions. It is the Environmental Health Services Manager and the Population Health and Outreach Manager. So those were vacant until, well, they are still currently vacant. We just made offers on those positions, so pleased about that. So those are new in here, and with that, stating that we just made those offers. The Environmental Health Services Manager, both of these were entered at the 1-year level as opposed to the midpoint. So the Environmental Health Services Manager will stay, that 1-year level will be accurate. But the Population Health and Outreach Manager will actually be the person going into that position is a current employee that is at that 8-year mark. So that will need to be increased. And the current rate would be $49,631. So those are 2 big changes that we made this year that will be in this 2022 budget that look different from last year. The other is this Environmental Health Specialist temporary position. We do have a full-time person who is on military leave. We don't know exactly when that person will return. We would like to leave this position in here for 2022, just because we don't know when the person will return. So we want to make sure that we don't have a gap in services. But as we've had conversations this year, there is lots and lots of work and I'm going to say catch up to just try to stay up on the needs that we have. So we would like to, I'm not asking to make this a permanent position, but we would like to have that additional environmental health specialist in the budget for 2022, so that even when our person comes back, we would still have some ability to have additional staff to carry out the duties. When that person left, they were still relatively new, so they will come back with training needs, and after being gone quite a while, they'll have to readjust and relearn some things as well. So that would be very helpful to us. And then the other thing that we've made a request for that has went to WIS is for an administrative assistant. Currently in our local health maintenance fund, we have a part-time administrative assistant. We're requesting, and this is probably our big ask for the year, is to make that a full-time position in the health fund. It's come back as a comment too from WIS. So those are the big changes that are in that personnel section. In terms of our 20s, I don't think in the supplies, there's not a lot of changes. It's mostly adjusting based on expenses that we've had or not had. We've reduced some lines. We've increased some a little bit, but not by very much. I think actually this category, I believe, is about $1,400 less than it is in 2021. And in the 30s, we did, again, some adjusting. We always try to look at what we've spent over the past few years, what we're anticipating we may need this year. And so the big things that I would say for this year, we did increase some training and travel a little bit because we have additional staff. And so we will have some additional expenses with that. The bigger one probably comes down to personal health care. I think it's line 50. And that is with our public health clinic. You all know that we have a contract with IU Health for our public health nursing, follow-up on non-sexually transmitted diseases, but they are the nurses doing the vaccine, all of those kinds of things with that. So we did put in a 2% increase for that agreement. And so that's probably a big change to note. And then the last thing is we looked at did we need some more capital expenses? And we have a piece of equipment specifically for its radar. It's a ground penetrating radar piece of equipment to help us locate and identify septic tanks and septic systems. And while, you know, $12,000 or $15,000 may be costly for a piece of equipment, it should save us lots of time and make things a lot more efficient in the long run to have that and help us locate and locate them better, being more sure about what we have. So that's where that piece of equipment came into play. And I think that covers the big changes. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but I think that probably hits the high points of our changes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Caudle. Let's check with council and see what questions they may have, or if there's any comments. Mr. Iverson, yes?
Yeah, I'll just start out by thanking you for all you're doing and for this pandemic that's going on, and very aware that your office is probably getting a lot of phone calls these days. I think the public also probably knows about the form on the Monroe County's website that they can fill out that also goes to your office in case there are violations to our ordinance. And I was wondering, do any of the changes in personnel reflect that increased call volume? I also wanted to ask if I noticed that your part-time line had been kept, been flat. So I just wanted to ask about that.
Sure. Well, you know, we try very hard not to ask for a lot. So I know it may not seem like that this year, but the call volume has increased. Of course, one of the things, even in 2020, that we changed was we did hire some part-time staff for call response. We lovingly refer to them as our complaint takers, but they are our call response staff. We didn't think that we would need them in 2021, but we did continue them. We have a couple people who have stayed with us in some different capacities in part-time work, which turned out to be very beneficial because as we've had this surge, we've had to increase their hours along with that. And essentially what we did with those part-time hours, we had other part-time vacancies that those individuals have just sort of filled that spot in terms of money. So that's really why we didn't ask for additional part-time funding. It is difficult. Sometimes if you look and say, you may say, well, you don't spend all of that. Part of that is usually because it is very hard to find, train, and retain part-time help on a long-term basis. So there's usually a lot of turnover there. Sometimes they may be vacant for a period of time. that kind of thing. So yes, call volume. We have our complaints. We have people who handle the hotline, people who handle the official complaints that come in, but certainly our vital records staff handle the frontline calls that just come into the main office. And then we try to disperse them if we need to among other staff, including that temporary position that we talked about. One of the things that we did with them this past year was really have them focus on COVID and help wherever we needed. So they have kind of done a variety of things. When we requested the full-time administrative assistant, I will tell you we had a lot of discussions coming up to the budget in our board meetings about adding somebody in our vital records staff because they are our frontline staff. They don't just do vital records, they are our receptionists, secretaries, whatever you want to call them in those positions. They do more than just handle birth and death records. So as we really tried to assess all the needs, we came down to adding that administrative assistant full-time because historically that position was able to fill in vital records. And so the idea is that they will be able to assist those extra hours for them, will help them assist vital records if they need to, assist the financial manager in terms of helping me. So when the administrator has some requests that might be able to be handled by the assistant, instead of going to the financial manager, that helps them, right? So that is why we asked for that new administrative assistant, was really instead of asking for another vital records position. We felt like it could be better used. This person does our social media. They handle our side of the website, the web pages, updates, all of those things, help us put together the annual report, pull all of that together. So there's a whole host of jobs that assistant does that, quite honestly, they're annual tasks or maybe quarterly. They might be biannual tasks. So if you have a lot of turnover in that position, you also have a very difficult time training and keeping those things knowledgeable in the person that's in that position.
So thank you for such a thorough answer. I really appreciate it.
Mr. McKim?
I'm thinking that ground penetrating radar equipment might be an ideal thing to move to another fund, potentially the fund that we just described earlier, or one of the capital funds. But that's, typically we don't put a lot of, I know that's not a strict rule. We don't put a lot of capital equipment in the general fund, but in general fund budgets. But this, so this is something that, I certainly see the need for it, but we might want to consider moving that to another fund once we talk about how we might want to use that other fund.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments? I guess I have one. So, as a council member, I think there's lots of things that keep us up at night, and probably the main one is, do our departments have the resources they need to fulfill their mission? And I think for a lot of us, at least for me, the health department is at the top of that list. And so it's something that we're constantly thinking about, but also kind of keeping in mind the limited resources that we have available to provide all of the essential services that we have to for county government. But I'm wondering, has the health board and you and your staff, have you looked at the ARPA resources and tried to identify opportunities there that might help with resourcing you and getting you, because I know that no matter what, you're never going to have all the resources you need, and I totally get that. But is there anything that you all feel like through ARPA might be helpful and If so, would love to hear about that.
Sure. Well, I would say we haven't done a deep dig, but we have had some conversations about that. Things ranging, one of the things that we've talked about is to be able to maybe take those funds and I've used the term retreat. I'm not sure if that's the best word or not, but to be able to do some, we have a strategic plan, but to be able to think big picture and what can we do differently if we really weren't maybe so constrained and worried about fitting it in this budget and not taking away from another county department, right? What does that look like? Do we want to think about harm reduction services in a different way? Do we want to think about mental health services? And, you know, we aren't people to provide direct mental health services, but is there a way that we could broaden that scope? Or I'll tell you one thing, and I'm not even sure that this is an ARPA thing, but it is something that somebody just sent to me and we talked about many years ago, and that is having kiosks within our building or county buildings in the community where people can order their birth certificate or perhaps other things that they need, and it will get sent to us, and they can use that kiosk to fill out the form, submit everything that they need to submit, pay, and then we can process and send that birth certificate out. They don't even have to come into our space if they don't want to. They can do it where it's convenient for them. So that kind of thing, somebody just brought it back up and I said, you know, we talked about that several years back, that would be kind of a dream thing. So to be able to go on kind of a retreat with the staff, to be able to have that facilitated and kind of think about what are the things that we can think about to serve our community better? And that might be helpful. And a big thing is to have help. We need to do an after action report for COVID-19 and look at what went well and what didn't. But there are so many partners. This isn't about having one meeting and one assessment. So being able to maybe hire someone who specializes in facilitating those discussions and helping us write that final report, because that will help us identify needs for the next pandemic, the next big threat, and how we might better respond to that. So I've got some other ideas, but those would be two that come to my mind.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for that response. And these are the kinds of things that I think we have to be thinking about. And if we have access to resources that can help you address this, we absolutely should be, continuing this conversation, particularly around the idea of strategic planning. Strategic planning is so important for every organization, but when we're talking about public health and what the health department does, it is extraordinarily important. And so, yes, I totally agree that you all need that time and the ability to form that plan, because that will have a huge beneficial impact on this community. And I think, if we haven't learned any lessons from COVID at all, that's one right there that we should all be able to kind of get around for sure. Thank you very much. And we'll certainly continue talking about that. Mr. McKim, did you have your hand up?
I lowered it.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Deckard?
I'll be really quick. And first of all, thank you very much, Penny. As always, it's wonderful to hear you talking about things like strategic plans and your ideas. And so many in this community are following your plans, your ideas, and often your voice on the things they're supposed to be doing. And the thing I would add to Councilor Spoonmore's really great thoughts are that there is going to come a time when we as a community are going to want to look back at what this was like for that knowledge. And we may in the future be more dependent on making our own decisions based on that knowledge. And not to mention the historical all of this that this community has been through. And I wish it were over now, but because of your leadership and others, we're walking towards that direction. And I think there's just a lot here that it reminds me a little bit, as I think about 20 years on 9/11, I think there's things we'll be unpacking for a long, long time on down the road. So thank you for coming and sharing a little bit with us on this as you present your budget.
Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, let's take a roll call vote to accept the general fund health budget.
Councillor Duckard?
Yes.
Councillor Iverson?
Yes.
Councillor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councillor Munson?
Yes.
Councillor McKim?
I'm sorry. I apologize. We can continue with the vote if you want, but we didn't discuss the 40 hours issue at all.
And everything else.
We can certainly go back and discuss that. Yeah, let's do that.
I mean, that's a pretty significant change.
Yeah, that's a big change.
Yeah. Ms. Caldwell, did you?
Yeah, we did not put that in there as a part of a request. What was requested of a board member was that they had a question when we were talking about our budget. We had a board member who didn't realize that our staff worked 35 hours a week and not 40, and kind of felt that probably 40 was more appropriate for the positions. I know a lot of times we talk about additional staff, and certainly additional time could make up for some of that. So this budget was not intended to ask that we go to 40 hours a week. It was asked to be put in there so that the board, so we could see what that would mean.
Okay.
So I was going to say, so I misunderstood then. So I just moved everybody up to 40 hours. So.
Okay. No, this is really, I'm glad that this came up. So you're really not requesting at this point.
I'm not.
That was for illustration only.
Yes.
Okay. Michelle, how long will it take to move it? Is it just a matter of putting 35 in the spreadsheet?
That is correct.
Okay. Council, I move that we adjust all of the positions in the Health Fund 1159-000 from 40 hours to 35 hours.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on this? Yes, Mr. Iverson.
I think while we're putting the numbers in, when Penny and I were talking about this, it was, I think, really interesting to talk about this as a curious question from the board, but also it's a question of quality of life for the staff. Penny, I don't know if you wanted to briefly talk about that.
Well, it probably depends on who you might be talking about or with on this, well, but yes. I will say that for many of our staff have reported, they like 35 hours a week. And they feel like it does give them that kind of work-life balance. So it's worth it. One of the challenges that we run into sometimes, however, when we are looking for staff to fill positions is that, people look at the salary and then they don't understand perhaps it's 35 hours a week versus 40. That kind of thing. I'm sure that there are some staff who would say, I'm typically, I'm having a hard time staying at 35 hours and keeping my comp time down. I'm having to flex a lot and use that comp time. So being 40 hours would be beneficial. But I think that the majority of staff over time have seen 35 hours a week as a benefit and something that they liked, and that extra time was worth that to them.
Thank you.
And to the extent that, you know, you can say, well, even if I'm exempt and I tend to work, you know, 40 or 45 hours a week, if I have the opportunity to work 35, I can. So even for, you know, exempt employees, I think that it can be beneficial. Is that what you were thinking? Did I cover what you were?
Not only did you cover what I was asking for, but it looks like Ms. Shell has completed the adjustment.
I did complete the adjustment, and because it's with regards to hours, it changed the original request. So it's not going to show up in the line increases or decreases, but I will fix that so that it will show up correctly. But that's the new total for the personnel right there.
So just to clarify, Ms. Call, you're okay with this being 35 hours? Okay.
Yes, that was our request. We were not making a request for 40.
Okay.
Council, I move that we amend the original motion on the general fund health personnel category to a total of $1,283,003.
Does that supplant my motion? That I think I've got one on the floor already to reduce those. To 30.
I'm sorry. We didn't vote on that.
No. We're working on that.
We're in the
I think we have
vote. So
yeah, call the question on the vote.
Okay. Yeah. Getting confused here. All right. So we're ready for a roll call vote on Mr. McKim's motion.
On which one? Oh, on
to reduce to 35 hours.
Okay.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Wilkes?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Okay.
Thank you for that catch. I might have been in hot water with my staff tomorrow.
Thank you, Kim, for catching it, Michelle.
So now we need a motion for the updated budget.
Okay. Council, I move that we amend the budget for the general fund health in the personnel category to $1,283,003, keeping the other categories the same for a total budget of $1,629,850.
Second.
Okay. Anything further from council? Any questions or further discussion? All right. We will have a roll call vote on the budget as amended, to accept the budget as amended.
Sorry. Councilor Wilkes?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
All right, up next is local health maintenance.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 1168-0000 Local Health Maintenance with $37,678 in the personnel category, $6,744 in supplies, $36,800 in services, and $100,000 in capital for a total budget of $181,222.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Call.
This should be pretty simple. The local health maintenance fund and the trust account are both tobacco settlement funds. So that is where the money comes from, the revenue. They are set based on population. So the money that we get from local health maintenance on an annual basis is $72,672. This is also based on the census. So the local health maintenance fund amount is not changing. This request does have us using some cash balance that we have. The one thing that I really want to note is this equipment is for vehicles that are actually in the 2021 budget. And as long as Mr. Crone is successful in finding me those vehicles, we'll be able to remove this from the budget. But I have to submit my budget to the state by the end of this month. And I need to make sure that I have that in there just in case we don't get those vehicles purchased. So this will replace 3 very old trucks that we have that are used by our environmental health staff. And you know, it just occurred to me that I may have to look. I think they're all over 10 years old. I just realized I don't have that note in front of me, but that is what is in this budget. That's the only thing that I would say is sort of a question mark. We may not need that. He believes that he can probably get those for me, but we want to put them in there so that they are available if we need them come 2022.
Okay, very good. Any questions or discussion? Doesn't appear so. So let's do a roll call vote to accept the local health maintenance budget.
Counselor Wilkes?
Yes.
Counselor Iverson?
Yes.
Counselor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Counselor Munson?
Yes.
Counselor Hawk?
Yes.
Counselor McKim?
Yes.
Counselor Deckard?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Okay. Up next is the Indiana Health Trust budget.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 1206-0000 Indiana Health Trust with $59,080 in the personnel category, 0 in supplies and capital, and $1,980 in services for a total budget of $61,060.
Second.
All right, Ms. Cottle.
Sure. Again, tobacco settlement money. This position that this funds is for a tobacco educator. They do our Baby and Me tobacco free program. Another part of their duties and what has been keeping them very busy is that they coordinate our Medical Reserve Corps volunteers. So in the last, they've still been doing Baby and Me, which is a tobacco cessation program for women who are pregnant, recently pregnant, and their family, their partners. But they have been managing all of those volunteers and coordinating all of that. So we do have a very small amount of this that is split and paid for from our preparedness grant. And I have not taken that out because I can never put it back if I take it out. So that is why there's a little bit of a difference there. It's split. This fund has been using cash balance now for a while, and we'll use more of that. I mentioned that the census can affect the amount of money that we get. So for the past several years, we have received $54,266.98 on an annual basis. This year, in 2022, we will get $52,828.42. So we will be spending more cash balance than we planned on spending. But so that is an area down the road where the board may say that, for instance, this position in 10 years may need to be covered by a different source if that tobacco tax money doesn't grow somehow. But that is where this money comes from, and that is what we are requesting to cover.
Okay, very good. Any questions from council? Ms. Hawk?
Just a comment that I hope that the revenue doesn't grow, because we just, I mean, the whole idea is to get people to stop smoking, and whatever it takes. So
it's a double-edged sword, right? Exactly. Sure we would like everybody to, stop that tobacco use so that this program wasn't needed and we could figure out something else, right? Yeah.
Not my choice, except I just don't.
I hear you.
Councilor Wiltz.
Do you happen to know the approximate balance in the account?
I can tell you an approximate. Hang on.
I'm sorry.
Nope, you're okay. The cash balance at the end of August was 180.
Okay.
Was 180,000. 180,000.
Okay. Yeah.
There's money in there to cover it for a few years.
Yeah.
If it were to go away. But I say that just because you know.
Yeah, no, it's good to know. It's good to keep in our heads. Thank you.
Totally.
Any other questions or comments? All right, let's take a roll call vote to accept this budget.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Wiltz?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Public health emergency is next.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 4906-0000 Public Health Emergency with $10,000 in supplies, $10,000 in services, zero budgeted in personnel and capital for a total budget of $20,000.
Second.
All right.
This is pretty simple. There's actually an additional $32 in this fund. This fund actually started out as an anti-TB fund. It was a donation way before me to help offset costs for people who needed TB treatment, x-rays, what have you. As that money dropped, and this again kind of started before me, but we used local health maintenance funds to move into this emergency fund so that money could be appropriated for whatever kind of emergency that we might need if we didn't have other funds to pay for it. And I'll give TB as an example. We usually can get that money reimbursed. So we might be able to use this fund to make those payments until that money is reimbursed. So it is local health maintenance money, that $20,000, but by appropriating it without something special, earmarked in the normal budget, it's kind of for emergency use. And we have never really had to dip into that as such, but it is very nice to have it there in the circumstance that you might need it. With COVID this year, it had money not, or the last 2 years, if money had not become available, if there hadn't been CARES money, this fund may have been vital to us providing some services.
Got it. Mr. Deckard.
Thank you very much. I wanted to clarify something. TB, like tuberculosis, correct?
Yes, yes.
And so this originally, whatever it was funding dollars in case TB outbreak or something like that. I absolutely agree with you 110% on having dollars set aside down the road. And theoretically, if you did not draw from them and you kept that going, I could see some benefits.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't jump the gun there, but I wanted to ask that, and then I'd love to hear other counselors' thoughts.
Any other questions or comments? All right, doesn't appear so. Ms. Miller will take a roll call vote to accept the public health emergency budget.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Wiltz?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cottle. Have a great evening. Okay, and up next is, so that concludes everything for the health department. We'll now move on to item 5, which is our convention center.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 4005-0000 Convention Center operating with $0 budgeted in personnel, supplies, and capital, and $574,688 in services for a total budget of $574,688.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. And so let's see, who all do we have? We have our friends, Mike Campbell, Talisha Kopic, as well as Mike McAfee joining us. I believe, is there anybody I'm missing? Okay, well, welcome to you all, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Oh, well, I appreciate you having us. And so, yes, this fund is a revenue fund that's set up for revenue that comes in from the operation of the convention center. I'm going to ask Talisha to speak a little bit about it, but this would be not approving any dollars out of the county funds. This would simply be from revenue that would be collected in the operation of the convention center. But Talisha, do you want to speak a little bit more to that?
Sure, yes. Well, I will say this is the 30th anniversary for the convention center this month. Next week was the Wetter Owl Beef Roundup as the first event. So good news. And so over that time, 15,000 events, over 1 million people, variety types of meetings and events. And this past year, we were happy to be able to serve the community by hosting the vaccine clinics and the blood drives. So we were thrilled to be part of all of that. So with this budget, this is the operations budget, and revenue comes from the operations, the rentals of the center, and the fund expenses includes the operations management fee, utilities, and maintenance and insurance. There's no change in this budget. We've kept it pretty much the same for 4 or 5 years. Obviously it's optimistic with, the really recovery and the revenue and expense depends on the pandemic recovery and comfort level of groups coming back into the building safely. And, we had a big fall scheduled, but we're finding that people are feeling better about like moving that to the spring or having smaller events is what we're seeing. So, in a normal year, we deposit about $500,000 to this budget. In 2020, we put 265,000 in, and this year to date, 77,000 in. So we are watching every nickel and dime. The Convention and Visitors Commission is helping supplement these funds with utilities and repairs from the funding that we get from that. We did receive the PPP forgivable loans, 2 of those, and the assistance with the food and beverage funds earlier this year were super helpful. We are still down about $400,000 in this budget, though, from last year and this year. But, we're taking it day by day. And, we've weathered economic downturns in the past in 93 and 98 and 2001 and 2008. So we'll navigate this as well. I think it's just a matter of people getting vaccinated, and we want to get back normal and safely. And, we're going to continue to look for supplemental revenue. I guess what I'm saying is we're not over this yet. We are still kind of in the middle of this as, planners are wanting to get back, but, they're bringing big groups of people, and, businesses and associations are probably going to be one of the last to recover. But with this budget, we wanted to at least get those line items set. And I guess if there's any questions, I'm happy to address those.
Great, thank you for that presentation. Let's see if we have any questions or comments. Looks like Ms. Hawk, would you like to get started?
Yes, to begin with, we need to remember that if the money doesn't come in, if the revenue doesn't come in, then they know they can't spend it. Now, it's very important because we still have to maintain that building. No matter what else happens, we have to make sure the utilities are paid and any kind of maintenance going on. And so I know that they'll be watching every penny. Talicia's had to do this before, but never quite to this extent.
Yeah.
Just have to wish them well and keep those pencils sharpened, because it's going to take that, I think, to get to the other side of this.
Thank you. Mr. McKim?
Yes, so speaking of maintenance, of course it goes beyond routine maintenance. There are a number of major systems in the convention center that are nearing the end of their, or are past the end of their useful life. And I know Ms. Kopic has been putting together some information on, what the priorities for replacing those systems would be, or upgrading those systems would be. And I really encourage all of us to support the convention center in our allocation of the ARPA funding. So hopefully my colleagues on the council will all support that, and the commissioners will support. We have to maintain our existing county facilities. That's not even about upgrading or building new. That's about taking care of the properties that we already have. And I know that Talicia and the CBC and that you all put every effort into extending the useful life of the equipment as long as you possibly can. But yeah, I really hope we're able to make a significant investment in with the ARPA funds and in making sure that this convention center continues to serve us for a long time into the future.
Thank you, Mr. McKim. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Iverson?
Yeah, I had a question because, as my colleagues have been talking about, tourism is just so important to our community and bringing people into our community. And I was wondering, Talicia, if you had any information about how full the hotels have been recently, or maybe you might have that information. I didn't know if either one of you have that information handy.
Mike Campbell, or I'm sorry, Mike McAfee, or maybe.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if we want to bring Mr. McAfee.
As far as tax collections go, the month of May was probably a high point for the county, and we were back to 90% in our collections versus what it had been prior to the pandemic, which was very encouraging. The summer was not quite as encouraging, but we were still at around 70 to 75% on tax collection, which is far different from what it was for the balance of last year. Last year, all in was 46%, and that was with 2 perfect months before it all started. So it was a big rebound, but in August was a very busy month industry-wide. Mike could probably speak to that more, but the month of August was a very encouraging month for the county.
Yeah, I can echo what Mike is saying. We've been 2019 is our benchmark that we're trying to get back to, and we've been neck and neck with 2019 really since early May as far as visitation to the market, number of people here, money spent, that type of stuff. So we're pleased with that, but we're obviously very cautious of the Delta variant, and it certainly has had an impact really since the 4th of July on consumer travel sentiment has dropped since then. But, we've seen so much pent up demand since the beginning of the year. People made reservations, they made reservations for this summer and this fall for personal travel, and they took those trips. Business travel, as Mike and Alicia alluded to, is lagging behind. It makes sense. Businesses are not going to send their employees on the road, and they're not going to let them get sick or something like that happen to them while they're traveling for business. So that's why that continues to lag, and meeting planners are so cautious out there. But definitely the demand is there for us, especially since we still are talking about, as undersized as we are, we do have groups we've got groups every week that we're dealing with and trying to work with and trying to find space with. There's not enough things that they wanted. They want more space than ever, just because they want it to be safe and things like that. That's really what it's all about going forward, is safety and quality and technology and being able to give them the space. And so we're looking forward to that in the future of hopefully working on the convention center. But yeah, sporting events, leisure travel, our numbers are exploding on our website. People are wanting to come to Monroe County. We're lucky to have such great outdoor recreation facilities to offer them. And they've been having record years. They've just been blowing it up. So short-term rentals, Airbnb, they've done 3 months in a row of over $1 million in revenue in Monroe County for the first time ever. So that's great. Yeah, so that's going on. It's a very healthy market. We're lucky that we're also one of the safest destinations in the state. I say Indiana University is probably the safest public space in the state of Indiana right now. So with a 92% vaccination rate. So, hey, thank goodness for the Monroe County Health Department. I follow everything they say every week about how aggressively we could market. We couldn't be more serious about safely marketing Monroe County to visitors. So, but we're in good shape. Thank you.
And your background reminds us there's some sold out football games coming up.
Yes, right. Sir. We've been trying to help people. This weekend is Parents Weekend. We've been trying to help people find rooms in Indianapolis and Bedford and other markets for a month, because there's nowhere for them to stay. And we need to win. Winning cures all. We need to win this game this weekend.
Well, and I think those full stadiums that we're seeing all across the country, not just here. I was at the football game on Friday and look forward to going, or on last Saturday and look forward to going next weekend. But the fans that were there was fantastic to see. Should have another sellout this weekend. I think that's just a precursor to what we're going to see with the convention industry. And so to go back to the convention center, and we've got 3 people here on this call with Mike and Talisha that, are on top of this stuff, really in touch with what the trends are in the industry. When do you have a sense of when things, I know it's all very much up in the air with the different COVID variants and so forth, but is there kind of a general consensus on when we'll see that the convention business start coming back to where it was pre-COVID?
It was interesting. I mean, if we just take our example here, everybody was so sure we'd be back like in the fall and we could start doing events, and we had all kinds of scheduling. And in fact, we were a little concerned of how we were going to keep up with it in September, October, November, because everything from the spring had got dumped into the fall. It was really strange. I'd say probably the day after Labor Day, we started getting these like emails of people feeling very concerned about their big events. That, the Artisans Guild, it's an art show that I think it's been going up for 30, 40 years. And they decided to cancel because of their demographic. A couple big fundraisers cancel. So a lot of those have pushed into the spring now. It seems like people are good at going 6 months at a time, that, get into the next season. And then, maybe a month away from their event, they start to see if they feel comfortable with their group of who they're bringing in. So, it's kind of a 6 month at a time is what we've experienced the last year and a half. It's all about when people get vaccinated and we can beat this pandemic.
And to go back to Councilor McKim's earlier statement about using ARPA funding for the convention center, to absolutely support that. And I hope all of us do, but I don't want us to lose sight of this very important convention center expansion project that we have promised to the community. And I know it's a very challenging time right now. I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing with the food and beverage tax revenue generation. I think for the first time since we entered the COVID era, we saw monthly receipts increase over what was before COVID for the month of July, I believe that was. So that's very encouraging. And I do talk to the business community. And, I hear this pretty consistently is, that's one of the questions that they're constantly asking. What's going on with the convention center? What is the plan? And I hope we don't lose sight of that. This is a team effort. It's going to require us to work with our colleagues in the county, with our colleagues in the city. And I think, as long as we keep sight of that and what the long-term goals are for the community, I think this is absolutely essential to the long-term economic health of Bloomington and Monroe County, that we get this project done when it's the right time. We keep our mind on that. I think it's going to be really important. So sorry to get off on a tangent there, but Mr. Decker, did you have a question or a comment as well?
I had a comment, but I'll let Mike McAfee, if I could. He looked like he had something to say.
I just want to say my last thing very quickly. You're right on. We're working on groups yet for this fall. We've got a big sporting event we're trying to make happen yet for December. It's really is. I think once there's that green light with event planners that the pandemic is it's not a trend that it's stabilized. It's actually stabilized, and they're sure of it. We're going to see increased bookings right there in the first 3 months. And then they're just going to really come through in the next 6 months. But there's going to be a balance to that, and it's going to be different going forward. It isn't going to be just like it used to be. But we're looking forward to it. We're about to hire a new salesperson and really chomping at the bit to get after it. So we're excited about it. We will not forget about it. We'll be bringing it up to you when we feel it's appropriate. Hopefully, yet this fall to touch base about it after you're through this process, and a couple other things that you're working on that are big, but could be more important to our industry. So
my main thing is I want to make sure that elected officials are keeping it on their minds as well too. I think it's just important that we don't lose sight of this for sure as elected officials. Okay, any other, Mr. Deckard? Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of expand on what you had said, Councilor Spoonmore, in that when the pandemic began, and of course we were having larger discussions about the convention center, one thing that I heard kind of enter into the fray is, well, maybe society will rethink how they gather together. And I think now, gosh, I say this all the time in these meetings, but we are now so far into this, and we've done this for so long. I think one thing that I can say, and this is anecdotal, but I hear it everywhere I go, whether it's church, school, work, streets, people want to be together. And there will be many people that do utilize technology. And my heavens, if this had happened 10 years ago, the creeks we would have been up. And this has not been pleasant, but I do think people want to be together. And as long as there is that, and I think that's because they're human and that's natural. And I think as long as there is that, and as long as we have a community that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing. I think we have to keep those discussions going. The other thing I'll say is I have been impressed beyond belief in the last year and a half how the members of this community, and to some extent us in public service, but the members of this community support our restaurants, our eateries. And there were times when watching numbers, I would say, I don't think people can cook at home anymore. I'm so impressed with the takeout that's going on. I mean, it is mind-boggling. These are great things to have, and hopefully we are close enough to an end to where happy days are here ahead. But I did not want that to kind of get lost in that shuffle as well. I agree with what Councilor Spoon was saying.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, seeing none, let's take a roll call vote to accept the Convention Center operating budget.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor Wilkes? You're muted.
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
All right, and next is Convention Center Visitor Tourism.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 1127-0000, Convention Center Visitor Tourism, with $0 in personnel, supplies, and capital, and $2,129,787 in services, for a total budget of $2,129,687.
Second.
Okay, thank you. This fund we use to support Visit Bloomington, also to underwrite parts of the convention center operation. And we do have some fees that we hold back for both incentives to land groups here, which falls under that commissioner expense, and then some small professional fees. We are proposing a 5% increase over this last year for visitor center services and convention center services for a couple of reasons. One, last year we reduced it by 10% in the operating. We are seeing some return to normalcy with demand and want to be able to take advantage of that. But just like everywhere, recruiting in hiring is a challenge. And if you're anticipating where we will be in the upcoming year, we want to make sure that we have the funds available with these organizations to be able to respond to that. Now, over the course of this year, we have budgeted and allocated, but have not spent all of that. And as the money, and as Marty Hawk says, the money was not coming in fast enough. And so we did not do full allocations to all of our member organizations, specifically Visit Bloomington. We didn't spend anything on commissioner expense and some other operational items in order to make sure that the fund was solvent. And so, but we are proposing a 5% increase in those two line items. And so happy to hear any questions.
Great, thank you for that information. Let's see if we have any questions or comments. Ms. Wiltz.
I have a comment, and I kind of waited until both of these budgets had been presented, because I think the way that Mr. Campbell, and Mr. McAfee, and Ms. Kopic work together on these things is incredible. It's, and I don't mean that, I guess, as incredible. It's great. It's amazing. I'll say that. The way they really make it work, and the way they're using data to drive some of these decisions, and really flex with what the data are telling them. It's been really a good thing to watch how they've been able to stay afloat and actually thrive through this pandemic. And I want to just, let you know that I wholeheartedly support a 5% increase, because in particular in this budget here, that's where we're going to be seeing the increases, the leading increases in revenue are going to be because people are starting to come to Bloomington. And we're seeing that people are traveling. They're not booking big events yet necessarily. And if they are, they're booking it outside. That will come, but investing in getting people just traveling. I'm not in Indiana right now. I'm traveling. It's happening. So I really feel like this is a good place for us to really remain focused and committed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hawk.
What I really love to see is this group that's been so well coordinated, working together for so many years. They've had to change what they are doing on a dime, as many other groups have, but they've looked at different ways that they can still provide services. And it might not be exactly as what one would have hoped to see, but they are continuing on making sure they're staying productive and that this community is benefiting. And so kudos to you for looking at the money, because I know while you're in charge, you're not going to let us just fall apart. So I appreciate your working so hard on these numbers.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Further discussion? All right, we will take a roll call vote to accept this budget.
Councilor Welts?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
All right, what do we have next year?
Convention
Center debt.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 4602-0000 Convention Center debt with $0 in personnel, supplies, and capital, and $636,000 in services for a total budget of $636,000.
Second.
Okay. All right.
This fund is specifically set up to service the loan on the renovations to the existing convention center, and then also the land surrounding that were purchased with the innkeeper funds, and so or reimbursed through that. So all of this, as far as the convention center debt, is either covered by innkeeper's tax revenue, or we do have rental properties on some of these lands, and we do collect rent from that. So between those two items, we cover the expenditure of or covering the debt. This is our principal responsibility for the innkeeper's tax, and we were able to utilize some food and beverage tax collections for this past year to help offset the dramatic decrease in revenue over the last 18 months. But we're proposing basically the same amount to cover the debt. Happy for any questions.
Let's see if we have any questions here. Ms. Munson?
Yes, first of all, thank you to Mike and Talisha for an excellent report on the various funds in your operations. It's really good to hear the turnaround that has taken place starting May, and I think we're all optimistic along with you. This debt fund of $636,000 has been the same since 2017. Can you remind us how much longer we have to pay on this debt?
I can. It is the balance on that right now. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. By April of next year, our balance will be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2.4 million. I believe this matures in its entirety in 2026.
2026.
I'm correct on that.
Thank you. I know that innkeeper's tax revenue has been decreased greatly because of the pandemic, but what do you, are there serious discussions about the likely request for ARP funding to help with this and to help us cover this debt?
We would certainly welcome that. I'm not sure all of the rules wrapped around ARP funding and debt service. But if we could do that, I think that would be would certainly free up any way we could pay off this debt fund. We would certainly free up the ability to use those dollars elsewhere.
Right. So what I was thinking was more making up for lost revenue.
Yes, absolutely.
Funding.
Yeah, if we were able to do that and make up for lost revenue and collection in that, we would certainly be able to do many more things and invest in tourism at a higher level than we're able to now. But this, I mean, $636,000 a year. So if we could vacate that, it'd be awesome. So,
I hope we'll be talking about this. Thank you.
You bet.
Mr. McKim, did you have a question?
Oh, I believe Ms. Munson and Mr. Campbell clarified the we can't pay existing debt, but we can certainly make up for lost revenue.
Perfect. All right. Any other questions or comments? Convention Center debt? Yes, Ms. Wilkes.
You mentioned the fact that there is a little bit of rental income, and I was wondering if you could just briefly talk about the trend on that. Is that pretty steady?
Well, this year, one of our large partners has moved out and moved into a new location off-site or off these properties. So we do anticipate a drop in rental collection revenue this year. And as we get closer, or if there's more uncertainty about what are we doing with the property or the expansion, we anticipate having a little bit more of that. So businesses crave clarity, and rightly so. But we do still anticipate a substantial rent collection. So we've anticipated it downwards. That's in our plan.
Yeah, it's not the primary purpose, I suppose.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else from council? All right, seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote to accept the convention center debt budget.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Wilkes?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
All right, and next up is convention visitor capital improvement.
Thank you. So this fund is...
I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell, we'll need a motion first. Sorry about that.
I got excited.
No, I'm slow, sorry. Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 4909-0000 Convention Visitor Capital Improvement with $0 in personnel, supplies, and capital, and $100,000 in services for a total budget of $100,000.
2nd.
All right.
Sorry, I was getting excited. It is,
No worries.
in addition to budget night, which is the second most exciting thing I will do tonight, it is the North-South women's soccer match.
Yes, that's right.
Right after I'm done here, I'm racing to South to go watch.
Yep. A lot going on tonight.
This fund is a fund that is covered through the Innkeeper's Tax Fund, which is one which we have set aside and contributed to very regularly, not in all months, but most months, and have it is set aside if there is capital improvements that need to be made either to the building itself or to the immediate exterior in the business envelope. So we've used this several times to repair equipment, do site improvements, replace roofs, tuck pointing in the building, and I think we're doing ADA accessible ramps outside with this year. So we do have $100,000 that is available or requesting to be available, just like we did this year.
Got it. Thank you very much. Let's see if we have any questions. Councilmember Hawk, yes.
Yes, I can remember before we had this fund, and I said, look, we need to be setting money aside because you never know when you might have to fix a roof or something. You need to have money to just go to and know you've got it there. Right. And I think this has served us well because there's been many times this has really been what they needed to fix things and not have to worry about taking it from some other fund. So I'm glad it's working out well. But do you have an amount that you actually had to spend in this past year? Or were you trying not to spend, or what were you?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, this year, everything, you're looking at what you don't have to spend, but there are some things when you're dealing with the building envelope, you need to do it or else it becomes a bigger problem. And so we do have one that is proposed for our meeting next week, which would be a $13,000 claim to help improve the site for ADA. But to date, we have not expended any this year. So I would anticipate it would be roughly in what it is in previous years because we don't see anything big on the horizon. But if something does happen in the next 3 months, we're okay. And the same thing would be that for next year as well. So.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? No? Okay. Well, we will have a roll call vote to accept the convention visitor capital improvement budget.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Wiltz?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Okay, and that will conclude all of our budgets for the convention center. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job, guys. Thank you. And next up will be our County Fair Board.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 1000-0806 Fair General Fund with $0 in personnel, supplies, and capital, and $104,172 in services for a total budget of $104,172.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We have here joining us Jake Kennard. I hope I got that name correct. And Chantel Alexander. Welcome both.
Thank you. Yeah, it's Connard, but that's okay.
Connard, sorry about that. All right, and feel free to present whenever you're ready to go.
Okay, well, we are both fairly new at this. This is only my second year in attendance for this type of budget. So, and Jake is our newly elected president this year. So we are kind of feeling the waters here. So feel free to help us out. We are asking, as you can see, for a reduction of 15% from last year. We had a very successful fair this year, and we did accomplish a lot with the money that you guys gave us last year on the property, and Jake can probably elaborate a little bit more on that. We still have some things we still need to do, and for improvements and things. And so that's where we stand with it.
All right, very good. And council, remind me, who is our liaison to the Fair Board? Is that Ms. Munson? Yes.
Yes, it is.
Her hand has already gone up. Very good. Did you have some additional information for us?
I do have additional information, and that is the Fair Board presented for my review a detailed budget showing various categories of expenses and how they plan to fund these. And they also looked at their likely revenue streams that don't come from county government, but from expenditures to the Fair Board and from rental properties that they have. I just want to say that I think the county made a wonderful investment in helping the Fair Board with improvements to their facilities. And I think the people of Monroe County and people from surrounding counties who have come to the fair have really looked at this and appreciated this, and they'll be coming back. So that's what counts.
Great, thank you. And let's see if we have any other questions or discussion from council. Mr. Deckard, yes.
I just always like thank you, first of all, for coming here, and you did have a great fair. Thank you so much. And I always like to brag a little bit on your auditorium. That is one of the best hidden kept gems on the west side of this county, other than Shreve Hall over at Ivy Tech. That's got to be one of the best facilities that we have. And I really like to brag in public because I'd love to see more people really utilize that or rent it from you and bring in some more dollars. So thanks for everything you do with that and so many other things.
All right, very good. Ms. Hawk.
Yes, when I spoke with Chantel earlier, she does have some figures that she is prepared to present if anybody has any questions. Would you like to make that presentation, Chantel?
I can. I did send to both Megan and Kim by email a copy of our balance sheet from last year at the end of 2020, as well as the balance sheet as of today. And you can see where our income, where we stand right now, what we have in our accounts. And I would say that like I said, we had a very successful fair. And we're still getting in some numbers there, but we're going to be around, I think 80,000 is where we brought in after expenses. And we have a lot of things that we still want to do. And one is a new swine barn that we're trying to accomplish. And we've got some issues with the barn that we have, and we'd like to improve that. We also have, gosh, I have a long list. Speaking of the auditorium, we have 2 new air conditioners that are going out on us, and we have replacement. We need to replace those. So various other things, but those are kind of some big stuff that we're trying to accomplish and help the 4-H kids with the new swine barn.
Thank you very much. And perhaps we can get the information sent to us so that we can look at the numbers that you sent into the council office.
Yep.
So thank you very much.
Very good. Yeah, we'll get those distributed for sure. Mr. McKim.
So thank you very much. What is your total annual budget?
Our total annual budget for 2021 was $543,500.
Okay, but for 2022, I'm just trying to get an idea of what percent.
Yeah, we actually have reduced it a little bit. 536,800 is our proposed 2022 requested budget.
Okay, so we're paying about 20% of the county contribution is about 20% of your budget. Okay, thank you.
Which has been pretty consistent over as long as I can remember, at least. Okay. Mr. Iverson, did you have your hand up?
But I put it back down.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay.
And Ms. Miller has indicated that she just forwarded those numbers to us. So for anybody on council, feel free to take a look and we can make those available to anybody in the public as well who may be interested, or media. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions or discussion from council. Does not appear so. So Ms. Miller, I think we're ready for a roll call vote on the Fair Board budget.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor Wiltz?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
All right, thank you, Ms. Alexander and Mr. Connard.
Thank you, guys.
Yes. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right, and next will be planning.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 1000-0079 Planning General Fund with $650,613 in personnel, $8,606 in supplies, $33,100 in services, and $0 in capital, for a total budget of $692,319.
Second.
Okay.
Good evening, Council.
Yeah, go ahead.
If Tech Services could also promote Larry Wilson to panelists, that would be helpful.
I just got on.
Thanks, Larry. Do you want to start us off, Larry?
Sure. Our budget is basically the same as last year. There's no real difference other than basically longevity type issues, increase in pay scale based on the salary ordinance, and our consultant fee will be falling off. So that's why the budget is somewhat less than a year ago. Just to bring you up to date on the last year, early this year, we finally accomplished something we've talked about a long time, and that is we implemented an online permitting system. And given all the complications and the number of departments that are involved in it, I think it's gone incredibly well. It certainly has created, during a time of pandemic, a way for people to continue to apply for permits, get information. I noticed to date we have done 100 pre-designs with individuals in regard to potential subdivisions, projects, and so on. And it's being done online virtually. Even when the office opened up, the number of people actually coming in has been greatly reduced from past years. Jackie, you want to talk about the online system? I mean, and the departments that are involved?
Sure. Yeah. So we implemented an online software used by the Highway Department, Building Department, Planning Department, and the Health Department. And I do have a couple quarterly updates on our revenues to date, just quarters 1 and 2. Just so far this year, quarter 1, we were a little bit below average, which the average is $30,050. But quarter 2, we were above average with bringing in $61,636, and the average is $45,000. So we've been extremely busy the last few months, and we're just taking in a lot of petitions. And I think the permitting software certainly made it a lot more efficient for us across departments to coordinate and accept fees and see things visually. So we're making some informed decisions moving forward based on that.
And real quickly, to update on the comprehensive zoning ordinance update, one of the things about planning and zoning, it's very much a process that requires public involvement. You have to have the ability to sit down and talk with people and go over maps and changes in zoning and text and so on. And so we were severely delayed by the COVID lockdown as far as moving ahead. We tried to complete and work on things that were procedural, not so much that would impact individual landowners. And we have just started to reopen the public involvement process by having meetings outdoors. Unfortunately, that's not going to be able to go on a whole lot longer. So I anticipate that we will probably be encumbering money going into the next year in regard to finishing the zoning ordinance. But I'm hopeful that we can finish it up sometime next year. Jackie, you want to add comments? Jackie's been handling most of the public involvement and has been the liaison with the consultant.
Yeah, the in-person meetings that we had at county park shelters went very well. We had over 50 or 60 attendees total thus far, and we'll still be having a Zoom component. So silver lining in all of this, I think we're engaging a lot more people, albeit a little bit more time intensive on staff. I think it's going very well so far.
And if anyone has questions, we'll be glad to try to answer them.
Yeah, let's see if we have any questions for you. Mr. McKim.
This is really just a comment and just to kind of give Jackie in particular kudos for the implementation of the online permitting system. I mean, everybody worked hard on that. Jackie really took a major leadership role, not only for planning, but for the whole county. And you know, I really credit her a lot with making that happen. And it was the right time to do it.
Thanks,
Jim. And just to follow up on that, the system is, I think any of you can go on and look at the system, right, Jackie? And it would be really interesting for you to see the type of questions and permits throughout all these county departments. One thing from just a supervision standpoint, it's very easy for us to now to see what's going on every permit, when it comes in, how long it's being taken, how long response from staff members. We can see if something's just not moving along and intervene. And ultimately, I think it's going to be really useful for example, if you have a constituent complaint from someone, that you're going to be able to go on and see what's going on rather than just hearing one side of the story. So it is working great. And again, the other thing with COVID is that, as you're aware, a lot of people, rather than taking vacations and trips, have invested in their homes, either adding accessory structures, doing remodeling, adding additions, or looking at new homes. And a lot of what we've done in the last year is not so much actually processing permits, but answering questions over what people can do as they're sitting at home with nothing to do, the inability to travel, and really are thinking about how they can use their property and how they maybe can expand their existing residences and businesses as well. So it's been an interesting year, and I'm amazed how well it's gone, given the fact that we were out of the office a significant part of the last year.
Mr. Iverson.
Yeah, I wanted to commend you all on the CDO process. MonroeCDO.com is a great website. Really appreciated the tutorial for the maps. I needed it. So thank you for that. And I'm sure the public will find that useful as well. My question is, has the Zoom session been scheduled yet?
We just worked with tech services and we're going to be announcing that date shortly, but it is tentatively set for September 30th.
All right, you heard it here first, Monroe County Council. Thank you.
And that's Monroe CDO.
That's right.
Okay, any other questions or discussion for this budget? All right, seeing none, let's do a roll call vote to accept the Planning General Fund budget.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor Wiltz?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you all.
Great, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, and next up is our very own council office budget.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 1000-0061 Council General Fund with $331,109 in personnel, $1,200 in supplies, $189,787 in services, $0 in capital, for a total budget of $522,096.
Second.
All right, Michelle.
Good evening, Council. This is a relatively flat budget, except for just a few little items. I increased the printing and copying supplies by $100, and that's just due to an increase in paper. I increased the dues line per your request to be members with the both the Bloomington and the Ellisville Chamber of Commerce's. So that includes their fees. And then with regards to the community service line, which is Sophia Travis grants, I increased that line using the growth quotient of 4.3% with an additional request of $10,000 from Councilor Munson. So that's all the changes for this budget.
Okay, thank you for that. And let's see if we have any questions or discussion. Mr. McKim?
I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more about this increase in the Sophia Travis. I mean, we're in an environment where millions of dollars are being poured into nonprofits all over. And I agree the need is great, but the resources are also great as well, particularly for the nonprofit sector. And I guess I'm wondering if we really need at this point, I mean, given that we have what, $30 million in ARPA funding to spend, some of which can be certainly allocated to nonprofits, if we really need to put that extra money in the general fund as well.
Okay, let's see. Who would like to go next? Ms. Wiltz.
Sure, thanks. I just want to respond to that concern, which is well taken. Because that is a good point. There is a lot going on in terms of money coming to local and nonprofit organizations. However, I think from our perspective as a council, operating this grants program, there's a big difference between the philosophy as I understand it behind the distribution of grants via the Sophia Travis program and the distribution of money with ARPA. And the main difference being Sophia Travis grants are really intended to take money and spread it broadly across many organizations, little bits of money, and really help these organizations in small, specific ways with specific projects that, and sometimes even help organizations that aren't normally on bigger funders' radars. That's, to me, kind of unique. And I think with ARPA, we want to keep in mind the directive to think really big and think transformational with respect to how we proceed with spending that money. And so I feel like there's a philosophical difference there. And that's just something I wanted to kind of point out.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Wiltz. Ms. Munson?
Thank you for the question, Councillor McKim, and it's a good one. And we've heard it previous years about when we've discussed increasing the amount for the Sophia Travis Grants Program. Every year we see approximately twice as much requests for funding as we have available to award. And just today, I gave the recommendation from the council to the commissioners who have approved the contracts with each of the awardees for 2021 from this grants program. There were 38 of them, and the total amount that we had to allocate was $135,400. I think the discussion among our committee members is that we would like to be able to expand slightly beyond the growth quotient that is set out by the state of Indiana and have our own growth quotient for this grants program because we see the need and we hear the need from the applicant organizations. But the funding doesn't have to come just from the general fund. It could come from other funds, as you suggested, Mr. McKim. So our interest is in expanding the funding regardless of the source of those funds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Munson. Mr. McKim?
Sorry, I guess to address Councilor Wiltz's comment first, I don't think that is necessarily a fundamental property of this grant program. I agree that is the direction that it has moved over the last couple of years, is to give small amounts to lots of organizations. But that's not necessarily fundamental to the principles behind the Sophia Travis grant program. That just happens to be what's happened. And again, I'll point back to ARPA as significant source of funding. I do understand the distinction you're trying to make in terms of large transformational grants versus small capacity building grants. I do appreciate that. I guess I would rather see this budget just get the maximum levy growth quotient and not an additional bump, but I'm certainly not going to be the one to make a motion to reduce it. So I'll shut up now. I just needed to say my piece. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Deckard and then Ms. Hawk.
Pardon me, I've got a frog. I appreciate all the comments that everyone is making. And this was my first year serving on the Sophia Travis Grants Committee, and I tried to keep up with both Councilor Wiltz and particularly Councilor Munson on that process. One thing I will say that was fascinating to watch in this program, I'd say Councilor Spoonmore had the same experience when he was on the committee, is that it is very amazing the scope and reach that these dollars get into with initiatives and particularly not-for-profits that I don't know are always traditionally reached. And I say that as a person that spent some time as a fundraiser for a local not-for-profit. And I think that there's something to that. And one issue that we did run into is that there is always a little more here and there in some of these great programs, whether it's St. Vincent de Paul and furniture, or it's one of the many food efforts that's going on in one of the pantries. And there certainly we didn't run out of things to help in the community in a lot of little corners. And so as I look at this, I see the need that Councilor Munson and Councilor Wiltz have been speaking to. I do want to see those ARPA dollars also going in as well. I do question if all of those entities that Sophia Travis reaches will be reached in the same way by the ARPA process quite like this, but we'll see.
Thank you, Mr. Deckard. And Ms. Hawk, did you have a comment?
Yes, my comment is that I'm just wondering if there's some way we can organize this in a different fashion, because this is taking a lot of our staff time that they simply don't have to spare for this, because then it's like always trying to play catch up, because we're right in the middle of trying to get the budgets together and so forth. We're asking staff we're putting too much on that staff person because this takes many hours. This is not just going to the meeting. This is many, many hours put into this. So I don't know what the answer to it is, but I think we need to, as a group, figure out how we can organize it better without taking so much staff time.
And
it's not fair. It's not fair.
And yeah, thanks for raising that that point, Councilor Hawk. And I actually do have some ideas on this. I have not had an opportunity yet to talk with the Sophia Travis committee, particularly Ms. Munson. But I do have some ideas that I would like to present to those folks that I think might alleviate some of what your concerns address there, and could be a real positive for the council and for the county and for our grant recipients overall. So I just had, it's been so busy these last few weeks and months. I have some business, and I look forward to further conversations with our interested parties on that, and maybe perhaps putting together some recommendations to address that. But thanks for bringing that up. And I would hope that our committee would be open to all of that, any options that could alleviate the time that our staff is spending on things and to make processes more efficient. So would be happy to do that. So, Ms. Munson?
Absolutely. We would welcome your ideas and thoughts on this.
Oh.
Thank you.
Ms. Hawk?
Yes, I would really like to suggest, as you're considering ways, that the people who want to apply for this would use the ability to be able to record it in such a fashion that any of us could look at their presentation at any time, and then you could score it however you wanted the people on the committee. But everybody, then they would have an opportunity to make sure their thoughts are presented to the group, and it wouldn't take each person's time to sit there and listen to everyone else's presentation. They could make the presentation, it could all be played back, maybe through cats or something.
Yeah, you've got some really great insight. Maybe Ms. Hawk would make a terrific addition to the Sophia Travis Grant Committee, perhaps, for a future year. But these are all things that, ideas that, and there are some local organizations that are doing just that type of thing that I've witnessed and seen and had demonstrations of. So we just need to kind of have some discussion about that, and then perhaps get some recommendations that we can talk about a little bit further that I think would go a long way to addressing some of the concerns that you have there, Ms. Hawk. In regard to the budget request, I spent 3 years on this committee, and I consider the time that I've spent on the Sophia Travis Community Services Grant Committee some of the most important, meaningful work that I have done as a council member, and really some very meaningful experiences for me personally. I have always been in favor of increasing this funding. I'm probably a little bit of a pushover when it comes to this, so I apologize in advance for that. And you know, I've got another year left on council, so I do have a question about this, because there will be another budget that I vote on in addition to this one. But Ms. Munson, do you see this as kind of an ongoing request of, you know, the $10,000 increase each year going forward? Is this more of a one-time thing, and we'll you know, see how this goes for a few years before considering further requests? Because for me, my concern is if it's an ongoing, you know, annual thing, maybe we should have a little bit more of a strategic look at how we want to resource the grants program, rather than just kind of doing this piecemeal year after year after year.
So it hasn't been piecemeal year after year, but it has been just a very slow and minor increase. And this is not something that the Grants Committee has discussed, but it is something that I think should be discussed. And I do know that there was general feeling that we should have more funding for 2022, and that was the immediate concern. Also, I think we would welcome suggestions for improving the process so that it is less time consuming and information is more available to council members and the public. But their CATS presentations are available year after year with the grant applicants describing their projects. And I hope to learn more what other council members would like to have in addition to what we've been doing.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments on the council budget or the Sophia Travis funding amounts? Okay, it does not appear so. So I think we're ready to take a vote on this this budget.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
No.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Wiltz?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Motion passed majority 6-1.
Okay, thank you all. That concludes the council office. And we'll now move on to Monroe County Emergency Dispatch.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 1222-0000E911 Fund with $0 budgeted in personnel, supplies, and capital, and $1,345,000 in services for a total budget of $1,345,000.
Second.
Okay, and we have joining us Amy Hensley to present some information for us. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, in the 911 fund this year, the main thing that we're asking to increase is the amount in the contractual. And the difference that we're seeing with that is there have been some new fiber changes that the state has put in, and that has increased our monthly outgoing. And in addition to that, we're adding video and data receiving capabilities with some of our software. As technology changes, we're going to start in the very near future to be able to receive things like data from OnStar And, you know, everything from tire pressure to video to any data that the cars can produce or that smartphones can produce, we will be able to start receiving those. And it's going to take considerable more time to process it and more staff. And so we've got increase in training. We upped it by $5,000. That's because we're continuing to add FTEs and continuing to increase our staffing. And that's really the main difference with the 911 fund. We've lowered what comes out for the interlocal a little bit, and the interlocal money goes into salaries.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we'll take some questions or comments now from council. It looks like Mr. McKim, his hand was up first, then Mr. Iverson.
Thank you very much. I guess I would not say that let me take a step back. I was on the committee along with the city, served on the committee that reviewed these budgets as part of the fire department and the PSAP tax rate discussions, and certainly support the budget as written. I think our one concern, and this is not a concern with the budget per se, it's a concern with the whole process, is that it's been very difficult to track the unspent appropriations, the reversions each year, which according to the interlocal agreement are supposed to be spent overall, are supposed to be spent on capital investments for the dispatch center. And so I know that our attorneys are working with the city to try to clarify, and Ms. Purdy, who's really bird dogged this issue, to try to clarify exactly what those numbers are. But I think I guess I'll just say that overall in the future, I would like to see all capital expenditures, as long as they're coming out of those reversions, if at all possible, rather than out of new revenue, which would, of course, ultimately allow additional revenue to be distributed as part of the public safety lit to the rest of the units. So again, this is not a criticism of the budget per se. I think that the items requested in the budget are fully appropriate and needed. I hope in future years we can fund them out of those reversions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Iverson?
Ms. Hensley, thank you for being here tonight. In your remarks, you talked about FTEs, and I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit further on staffing and how that's going in your area. Are you finding enough folks? How is turnover going? That sort of thing.
We have struggled in finding applicants. We have applicants that come, and in the last 3 hire batches, applicants that were very interested got offered more money to stay at their current jobs and pulled out of the process. And so we find that we've got to be more competitive with salaries. And we have increased our staffing a little bit. It's been slow. We've had some natural attrition. We've got one gentleman whose wife just recently got a big job offer in Virginia. So we're about to lose another one as they relocate. And we wish them all the best. But, you know, those are things that we have to continually look at as we're working towards increasing our staffing. We're trying to follow what the Novak report had recommended, the report that was done by the consultants back in 2019. And their recommendation based on our 2019 stats of calls for service and just overall the busyness of the center was that we have a total of 9 dispatchers, more than what we've got. So we had worked towards increasing it in a 3-year expansion plan. Well, actually they recommended 9.5. So the first year we asked for 3.5. This year we're asking for another 3 that will help to get us in line with the Novak recommendation. and it is going slow. We're hoping that salary increases, and as COVID kind of settles down and everything, we're hoping that next year will be even more productive.
Well, thank you. And I'm sure you will not be surprised to hear this, but we've heard similar remarks from other units too, that there's just so much going on in the labor market right now, and it's just really difficult. So thank you for everything you're doing. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And also, I'll note that Chief Mike Dekoff with the Bloomington Police Department's on the call as a panelist. So, Chief, if there's anything that you want to add at any point, feel free to do that as well. All right. Who was? Yes, welcome. Thanks for joining.
I don't have anything to add. I'm just here if there's questions.
Yep.
So
great. Thank you for joining. Who else had a question? I know I saw another hand up. Maybe not.
Councilor Munson's hand up was up.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, Ms. Munson.
I did have my hand up, thank you, but I took it down because Councilor Iverson covered the staffing questions and comments. And I do know how important this is. And I think we have to be realistic about what it's going to take to come up with to the level of staffing that is really needed. If it takes raises, then we're going to have to actually discuss this. And I'm willing to do so. So thank you for your efforts, Ms. Hensley.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further from council? All right. I think we're ready to take a roll call vote to accept the E911 fund budget.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Wiltz?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
All right, and next up is PSAP Lit.
Council, I move to open for discussion and review Fund 4933-0000 PSAP Lit Interlocal Appropriation Fund. With $0 budgeted for personnel, supplies, and capital, and $2,913,929.22 budgeted in services, for a total budget of $2,913,920. All right, try again. $2,913,929.22.
Second.
All right.
Okay, so the biggest change in this is in the salary line item because it does include a salary increase, and it also includes the additional FTEs for the staffing upgrade that we had talked about. We also put in for an, I don't think there's any change in overtime. Of course, the additional staffing brought up an increase in the PERF and the FICA. Overall, we decreased a little bit some of the maintenance and utility line items, and we moved some money out of other supplies because in the past we had been moving it to take care of building repairs. So this year we lowered other supplies by $13,000 and automatically put them in the building repairs where we actually are needed. The capital improvements that we're going to do, we're purchasing, or we're planning to purchase 2 Vesta Command backup systems, and what those are is a 911 call taking that works off of a VPN. And so any place where we would be able to get internet, we would be able to very quickly set up a remote 911 center if we ever had an issue where we had to leave the building, or if we had to increase our numbers considerably. because of a natural disaster, that would allow us to do that. The other increase that we saw in capital is that the state infrastructure is making a change, and we're going to have to buy some software to upgrade some of our radio equipment to continue to be compatible with the state upgrade. And other than that, it pretty much stayed the same.
Okay. Very good. Let's see if we have any questions or comments. Council on the PSAP lit Interlocal Appropriation Fund. None? I'm good if everyone else is. Ms. Hawk, did you have a,
right,
like you're thinking there?
I don't, well, the whole time she was talking, I don't know if this is right screens pulled up for what she was talking about.
There's not a lot.
I know you all have like 2 screens you're looking at.
I think what's
this is what was submitted to me, was that total. She's reading from a detail list that apparently Amy has on hand.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was just looking for what she was talking about. Right. And I wasn't finding it. Okay.
Because I guess it's a contractual thing. So she's talking about what's making up.
What makes up that total? That's correct.
Right.
I'd like to check with our legal counsel, Ms. Rice. Could you explain how these budgets are put together? And there's a board, right? I believe we have one of those members here with us.
Yeah, we have an interlocal agreement, and I can share it if you'd like. Let me see if I can share my screen real quick. Oops, somebody else, whoever's sharing their screen, maybe, there we go. Let me see. So we have an interlocal agreement that was last adopted in 2018. It's between the city of, you can see, let me start from the beginning here. We submitted it to the Attorney General just so that they would have a copy of it. And it was recorded May 17th of 2018. And together, the city and the county operate this dispatch center. We have 2 different boards. One is made up of the police chief and the sheriff. And let me get to that part. So we talk about staffing. Right now, this staffing says that we'll have 31. To the extent that that has been changed or will change, this interlocal agreement will need to be updated. And that's something that we'll be working with city staff in the fall to talk about things like how much money is in the reversionary fund for capital, and are there any changes that need to be made to this? But you can see that there's a policy board. It's made up of 5 members, 2 from the county, 2 appointed by the city, and the 5th appointed by the mayor, but it has to be a law enforcement representative from IU. And then there's a 2-member policy board. Get to that part. This has their duties. And then there's a 2-member oversight board. So the oversight board is made up of the sheriff and the city's police chief. So this agreement is supposed to govern all of the ways that we operate this joint dispatch center. And the city has the day-to-day supervision of staff. And then this, but again, the sheriff has a role to play here. The oversight board holds meetings as they deem necessary, and their meetings are required to be open to the public. And then they have these duties to sort of jointly oversee the way that the dispatch center operates. Again, the chief of police has the day-to-day supervisory power between these 2 individuals, and Amy, obviously, who's on this call, has done a great job of being the director of the dispatch center, and she is a city employee.
So
but
in the formulation of the budget, it would be, there should be the police chief and the sheriff kind of weighing in on that budget. But we may want to ask Chief Dekoff. And everything look good on your end and, and with the sheriff?
Yes, we obviously we're closely monitoring the personnel situation, and like someone stated, we're struggling like everyone else is keeping personnel, but we continue to move forward and continue to try to keep hiring people to keep it fully staffed. So.
And I always offer, I will extend my offer to Chief Dekoff. I'd be more than happy to post notices of any meetings that you need and to attend to keep you and the sheriff on track as need be. So just let me know.
Yes, County Attorney Rice is very helpful when it comes to assisting us with anything we need.
That's the word I like to use, helpful. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, Ms. Hawk, and I'm sorry. I think Mr. McKim's hand up was first, then Ms. Hawk.
So I just wanted to make the general comment that in response to Councilor Hawk's issue at the beginning, on August 31st, Kim sent to the entire council a detailed PSAP budget that included E911 and PS Lit or PSAP Lit. And the bottom line in PSAP Lit agrees exactly with the amount we're being asked to appropriate here. So it has the detail to the penny of what we're being asked to appropriate through the interlocal.
I remember seeing this. So,
Ms. Hawk, yes.
Yes. Part of the agreement is that we are supposed to be getting notice of reserve balances. And if you'll scroll back up on that agreement, I can't remember what page it's on, it makes it clear that if a fund should run short in order for operations, probably not saying it the way this is said, but whatever they're short, it would then go to the reserves. If there wasn't enough in the reserves, then any shortfall would be shared equally between the city and the county. And so it's essential that we keep track of the reserves and dollars that's coming in and making sure that we're keeping in place our reserves and know where the reserves are. Just FYI.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll see if there's any other. Mr. McKim, did you have another comment or just your hands?
Oh, I apologize. I'm just.
No problem.
Okay.
Oh, looks like Ms. Hawk.
There it is. Yeah.
Right. And the other is at when you go up to the, it says to the extent the dispatch funds exceed the budget of the dispatch center, the excess shall be held by the county in the 911 fund or the PSAP fund. Yeah. So that's supposed to be the reserve fund. So I'm just hoping that when you look at this and Ms. Rice, that you'll remember that portion of the document as well.
Right. Yeah. And we have asked, you know, we are required to get the accounting from the city to figure out sort of how much they think that they have in reserves. And that's been a topic of conversation. We haven't always agreed about how much is in reserves. And so that we intend to get together this fall and roll up our sleeves and see if we can agree upon numbers about how much is reserved. Because again, and I know Chief Dekoff will appreciate this, we want to right size this fund. We don't want to overfund dispatch or underfund it. But to the extent that there is enough, you know, once we properly fund dispatch, there can be remaining revenues that could go to the city police department and the sheriff department. So we want to make sure that we are getting the numbers right so that we are making sure every other available dollar for public safety can flow to the city police department and the sheriff's department because they need those dollars too. So
Right size. That's some pretty controversial terminology with this group.
Yeah. One of the, I can
Ms. Munson.
You guys too, if you guys would like.
Ms. Munson.
I just wanted to add that this question about the reserves has been going on for multiple years. We need to just get it settled and figure it out. Thank you.
One of the things that I might add is, in order to be diligent to this particular subject, we are working on a 10-year capital plan so that we have a really good idea of what will be needed in the future. And I'm in the process of finalizing some of the quotes from some of our vendors on that and putting together that information for both city and county.
And let me also remind council members that the building in which dispatch is in, transit is on the first floor, dispatch is on the second, that is a condominium. So there is an agreement that's recorded between the various parts. So let's say that the roof has to be replaced. That's not going to be dispatch's entire responsibility. That is going to be split the way any other condominium would be split. So, we did it that way. The Waldron Art Center, that was also done as a condominium agreement. So it's not unique to this building, but it was a way that we structured it because it made sense. This Public Transportation Corporation is a separately owned and separate governmental entity. And obviously dispatch was going to be this group run with the city and the county. So in order to structure so that we share one building, we felt like that was the right way to do it. So capital expenses for the overall building are shared between transit and the city and county, but capital expenses just to the second floor are shared just between the city and county.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion on the PSAP lit interlocal appropriation fund budget? The lengthy one. Okay. I think we're ready for a roll call vote to accept it.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor Wiltz?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay, and so that concludes all of our budgets that we reviewed. Congratulations, everybody. Now we're going to have a discussion here just on some final budget items and things that may have been left over from the last 5 days. Mr. McKim had mentioned, well, let me first ask if there's any, if council members have any comments to make at this point or otherwise. Mr. McKim.
Yeah, so I guess I was just going to follow up on the discussion about the per diems.
Yeah.
The per diems fund, given that the ordinance specifically says that it's able to be used for anything that is the general fund can be spent on. I was thinking that we might want to move some, a number of kind of one-time expenses. Definitely capital stuff. Like I was thinking, a couple things that came to mind immediately were, of course, the ground penetrating radar for health, but also the parks equipment that we put in the general fund. We put a fair amount towards some kind of one-time or non-salary initiatives in parks. I'm sure there are some others that we can come up with that we can move into the per diems fund. Now the question is, is doing it on the fly tonight really the right time to do it? Or one of the things that I thought we could do is just create kind of a placeholder budget, maybe a commissioner's budget in the per diems fund, and appropriate some amount in the services and capital categories for advertising purposes, with the idea that that gives us some time to go through the budget and look at items that it would be appropriate to move into those funds. So I'm curious about that.
Really good idea. And, that will give, I think staff can really scrub the budget to identify what some of those eligible expenses could be that we could use that money for. But yeah, in the meantime, let's just get a placeholder there, and that will make things much easier, I think. Anybody else have other thoughts? Yeah, Mr. Iverson?
Yeah, there's $1 million in that fund, million plus, and I think it would probably do us justice to spend some time thinking about the best way to invest those funds. I like the idea of taking a little more time on this.
Yeah, we're kind of hamstrung by the advertising process, and that's where I'm thinking just come up with a placeholder that's higher than, or as high or higher than we want it.
Ms. Chell, what is the timeline on advertising again?
If we want to keep with the October 4th, public hearing date, we need to advertise the budget into Gateway on September 22nd, the 23rd at the latest.
Okay, absolute latest September 23rd.
Right, because we have to have 10 days between advertising and the public hearing.
That doesn't give us much time, a little over a week from right now. Okay, Ms. Hawk, did you have a?
Yes, I would want to make certain that we understand that we don't just start spending this like it's free money, because it is not. And I would much have preferred that we got that ordinance changed. The commissioners need to just make certain that we just don't have it that way, that it would just be revenue coming in the general fund. It would have been in the miscellaneous revenue, and we could have used that for payroll, because at least a portion of it that we felt like would be ongoing. And so that needs to be corrected. So I want to be very cautious that we don't spend any money out of there that's not a part of this existing budget that's going to help us free up money for payroll if we're going to try to. So I don't want anybody to think, oh, let's just start buying all this stuff. Because this could, if we get this changed, if the commissioners will change it, so to start going into the general fund miscellaneous, it will help us make payroll for the following year.
Okay, so I do have a question. So you're wanting in the per diem a placeholder. It doesn't have to be because when we advertise it, I need to know if it's supplies, services, or capital. So I'm assuming
services and capital.
It's going to be capital.
Yeah.
So my thought was to maybe put some in both services and capital, or at least create the line in services. We could always transfer then.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It would make sense to just, well, no, I mean, there might be some services, there might be some contractual that's kind of one time that we might want to move over. So I guess I'd be inclined to put some in both.
Well, and I was saying that because I know that the parks have a 5-year plan or something, and that was one of the larger things that she was asking for.
Good one. Yeah, that's another one. Exactly.
It's not just soccer goals.
Right.
So is there anybody opposed to this idea?
No.
Okay, so I say let's just do it. And I don't know if we need a motion, but I guess need to determine dollar amounts too, but feel free to throw one out there.
Well, I can make a motion and then we can adjust the numbers as we wish. Council, I move we create a new budget, Commissioners 4903-0068 Juvenile Per Diems Fund, and appropriate $300,000 in the services category and $300,000 in the capital category.
Second.
Okay. Let's have some discussion and questions on this. Ms. Hawk?
Yes, I mean, you're calling it the Commissioners Fund. I have some problems with that, simply because, I mean, are we going to wait on them to determine what needs to go in that fund?
Let's call it the council.
I don't know. Anyway, you can think of on that. I'm ready to go.
Well, how?
I want to see what's going on.
I guess because the commissioners tend to pay for, well, capital items definitely, and a lot of the bigger contractual items that serve multiple departments. I guess that's why I thought commissioners, but I mean, I'm open to other suggestions.
Whatever, how it works. Just don't want it to sit there, $1 million setting there, and then we can't figure out a way to provide the raises that we're working on.
Well, the commissioners were strongly in favor of us providing the WIS, implementing the WIS plan. So
yes, they were.
I wouldn't think they would be an obstacle to that.
I think they could just vote to say yes, we could switch it right now, put it in general, but maybe it's too late.
You mean to change the ordinance and change the?
Yeah, just remove the ordinance. That's why it's no longer essential. It's not whatever.
I mean, I agree in principle. Councilor Hawk's right that ordinance is not. We've now bought the building. The kind of hoarding of that money has served its purpose. But
there's another fund too, and I don't know whether that's been spent all the way down. The dollars that were that came back in levy excess, not excess levy, but levy excess, which was when the whole welfare budget was just disbanded, and we got back some dollars. And rather than just letting that just go here and there, we established a separate fund for juveniles, and it was like in a rainy day, and we pulled part of that out to pay for that building. If you'll remember, what did we pull, $1 million out of there? And that's not a growing fund. There's nothing going into it, but did we spend it all the way down? Is that fund now?
I want to make sure that we're keeping the discussion germane to the motion that's on the floor.
I think that to me, that felt like it was a part of that, because it's like freeing up funds, but whatever.
So Mr. McKim's motion is to create this budget with $300,000 in the services line and $300,000 in the capital line. Any further discussion or questions?
And here it is right here.
Yeah, just with the idea that it gives us some time to go through the budget again and figure out which line items it's appropriate to move over.
I am not seeing Miss Shell's screen. I'm seeing a black screen right now.
Yeah, I don't have anything on mine either.
All right. That do it?
Can anyone else see it? There we go.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There it is. Okay. Any other discussion or questions on this?
I think the total would be 600.
Should be 6,000. Yeah.
Yeah, 600,000.
Great.
We'll get that fixed here. So, understanding that the total will be 600,000 for this budget that has been proposed by Mr. McKim. I think we're ready. If there's no further questions or discussion on it, I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor Wiltz?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Okay, very good. We're all set there. So we'll ask staff to kind of scrub the budget, and consultation with council on some ways that we can get some items moved into that budget to free up some money. Yes, Mr. McKim.
And of course the commissioners as well. I did run this by Ms. Purdy, but I mean, this came so last second that, you know, clearly we weren't able to consult with the commissioners. So we'll want to.
I'm glad that that we did this. I think this is a really good idea. Thanks to everyone who worked on it. Really appreciate the creative thinking on this. This will be helpful. Okay. Anything else? Mr. Iverson, did you have anything?
I did. Council, I move to reopen the Budget Commissioners 1114-0068 Lit Special Purpose Fund for the purpose of adding a line in the services category for girls coding camp in the amount of $10,000.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Let's see if we have any discussion. This is kind of a follow-up to what we were discussing last night. And yeah, Mr. Iverson, did you have some additional?
Yeah, I want to thank Mr. Spoonmore and Mr. McKim for helping find the right place for this. I also want to thank Ms. Hawk for recommending the action last night. And so this has been a real team effort, and I thank everyone involved.
Great, thank you. Ms. Munson?
I just wanted to say I'm very excited about this and I heartily support it.
Very good. Anything further from council on Mr. Iverson's motion?
Great idea.
Great. Seeing none, let's take a roll call vote.
Sorry, Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Wells?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Okay, very good. Let's, Michelle, what else could be helpful in your estimation if we give you some additional clarification here heading into the next steps on the budget?
We need to talk about how to increase for WIS and placeholders for that, for the potential of the increases. I wanted you to see here, whoops, I put it in the wrong spot. Here's your recommendation. And I'll get that all cleaned up for you, but at least you can see that it's there.
Take your time, no problem. Sorry to.
Yeah, that's okay. So there it is right there.
Perfect. Thank you. The Women's Commission is very, very thankful.
Yeah, so I think I would like to kind of do the same thing, is put placeholders for the increase amounts. And hopefully give you a better idea of how much it will be before you actually adopt in October, but at least get those amounts in there so that we can advertise high enough, kind of thing.
Okay. Mr. McKim?
I think Ms. Munson had.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Munson.
Your hand blends into the tan.
Yeah, I've had that problem before. That's a camouflage hand there.
And it blends in for me too, and I don't see it, and that's why I forget to lower it. Sorry.
So Michelle, when you did the kind of placeholder calculations, you did it based on $1 million in salary total, right?
Correct.
So
and
I guess, oh, sorry.
And I was just gonna say, and that's just a guess, because what I did was we have, according to this our workbook here. And that's what I wanted to kind of show you is this is the amount, we have 562.61 employees within this workbook. And that's who we need to give these raises to. And so I took that amount and I calculated, because I have it for each fund, you know, the amount of employees in there. And so just came up with a percentage just as a guess of how much would it cost. So, and I sent you guys a very detailed, you know, email with how WIS says we need to approach this, and how if we go a flat rate, it's not going to capture everybody, or it's going to over capture, you know, or if we go with a percentage. So I want to be able to give you a better look at that, but we need a placeholder for an amount of money.
So I guess I think that's a great strategy. I guess then the only question is then what the overall number is that we want to put towards this effort. We had talked about $1 million earlier, but you know, we could certainly adjust that number up if we wanted, and just bite the bullet.
And this is going back to Ms. Schell's earlier comment. This is for advertising purposes, right? That's what you're needing the number for more than anything.
Right, because I don't know where I'm going to land in the long run. I think it possibly could be a little bit cheaper because we have had some people term. We have had new people come in, which means we do have more newbies rather than we've had some just overall changes in the personnel, because the numbers and everything submitted is based on 2019 and 2020 personnel.
Yep.
But WIS did add a 20 and a 25 year step levels, but there's only a handful for each of those categories. So I don't believe it would be much more of $1 million, if that, you know, on some things. So there are some people, as WIS stated, if we go with the way that they do it, there will be some people that don't qualify or will get very much of a raise because they're so close to that target anyway. And one of those groups is the merit deputies, as well as I think it was the correctional officers. I mean, we've been working toward getting them there. So their jumps won't be near as much in those departments. So.
Which makes sense, because we just, particularly with the merit deputies, we just, you know, increased their salaries substantially, precisely for this purpose. So we were just a little ahead of the game with.
And I don't know, and I know that Lisa Ridges spoke to this about it. I do know that WIS's recommendation for the highway to go to a 4-tier level is just not going to probably work with their union. So I think we're going to have to work with them to develop a similar grid, because they have their own grid now, but they would like to make it work and follow the steps that WIS has recommended with the step increases that we have, because theirs right now goes all the way up to 45 years. Sure. And this would help clean it up a little bit, but I think they would have to, you know, you got to work with the union on that one. So I'm not sure where they're at or how that one's going to work, but yeah.
So I guess what I'm thinking here is I would like to make as much progress. I personally would like to make as much progress as we can on those WIS recommendations. And we were told that it would be somewhere around 1.7 million to fund them, to fund those recommendations at 100%. At this point, we have essentially committed or signaled that we want to commit $1 million of that 1.7 million. That was before we got through these budget work sessions. And I think just a few minutes ago, through Mr. McKim's motion, we saw some pretty substantial breakthroughs there with some different things that we can do. So I'm knowing that I'm fine with, using a placeholder of, funding at 100%, the 1.7, and maybe others don't agree with this, but I think I'm okay with that, recognizing though that it's not a final commitment and that this is so that we can advertise. And if we can meet that threshold, then I would be happy to get there 100% this year yet, if we can do that. But that's just kind of the way that I'm thinking about it right now. I saw Ms. Hawk's hand just go up, but it looked like Mr. McKim, Ms. Munson, and Mr. Iverson were in line before that. So who'd like to get started? Okay, Ms.
Actually, I'd like to hear the comments from all my colleagues first.
Ms. Munson.
Okay, I just want to note, should we not be also including placeholders for the additional FICA and PERF?
That was my question.
When I calculate, my idea was when I calculated that in there, the million, because we had talked about that before, that the million was the target and that the fringe was extra. So, but when I put it into the budget, it would be calculated in. So, okay. It would be, so 1.7 plus the fringe.
Okay.
If you went the whole way. Okay. Yes, I would include that.
Good.
Okay, Mr. Iverson.
And then I was going to take it one more step further and say, once we have that number, it would be good to see that in, just to make sure that like that works out in the 4B and just that we know that we are good to go here. I mean, it looks like there's plenty of resources to be able to invest in our people, and I fully support this. But, just want to see it. Doubting Thomas over here.
Ms. Hawk was next, and then Mr. Deckard and Mr. McKim after that.
My question was going to be along the same lines as Councilmember Monson, like about what are the benefit costs that we have to add on to the 1.7 and, round that off at whatever it is so that we'll know about what kind of money we need to have. And then we need to take another look at what our revenue is and how much it has been growing over the past few years, all tied, or pretty much all tied, to that income tax, bringing in more than it had in the past. We may know more about what we can do by the end of this evening and what the city's doing, because remember, they'll be pulling more of the income tax once if they do proceed with all this annexation. So we'll all go on that, but we could put it together and then do what we can when we have more information.
Okay, Mr. Deckard.
Thank you very much. To add to this, I would just indicate my sentiment is that whatever we can do, as much as we could do, I think is really the route in my mind that I would like to see us go. I recognize that we do not have all the details, much to what Councilor Munson, Councilor Hawk, and I think even Councilor McKim really are saying. There's a lot of details, and I can personally say Michelle and I've had a lot of conversations, and her wrestling these numbers to the ground have been just tremendous in an effort to chase what WIS has offered for us, now making that actually happen. I do like the option of having more flexibility through advertising that can ultimately then get us to a better informed decision. We can look at all available revenues, future projections, and any other crafting that we've got. You know, Councilor McKim did do a tremendous thing earlier tonight. He also has been helpful with discussions with Highway on, you know, some of those ongoing issues with labor, as well as a few of you others. And there's more details to work out. But I one thing we're really good at is giving ourselves the flexibility to reach whatever we got to do. And I think that that option might be here before us.
I do have another question. The 1.7 does not include elected officials and their chief deputies or SOs. And I need direction on how to move forward with them. Now, WIS's recommendation is that the chief deputies are factored at 90% of the elected official, which I can do that easily. And then I just need to know how you want me to, what kind of increase that you want me to include for, to calculate for elected officials.
My thought on the elected officials was we hadn't received a recommendation from WIS on those salaries. They provided some information that we had asked for,
right?
But it wasn't in the form of any recommendation.
No,
the recommendations are more based on full-time employees. I would consider our chief deputies in that category. So
okay,
maybe others don't. I don't know, but I would consider them employees, not elected officials. Mr. McKim and then Mr. Iverson.
So I guess, again, the purpose tonight is not to work out all these details. I agree. We're going to have a list of all the specific issues we're going to have to figure out. We're really looking more broadly right now.
Right, but I'm just saying, I mean, I need, do I need to group them together and say, okay, we're just going to give them, not give them, but just use an arbitrary percentage to make sure that we cover whatever you guys decide you want to do. So
I guess my thought is I would like to pick, advertise at I'm going to let's say $1.7 million allocated the way that Michelle has already tried to work. $1.7 million of salary, which is going to add another 21.85% of fringe. Mm-hmm. We know what that number is. It's not a mystery. That's
right.
Perf plus the FICA. So we'll know those numbers. There are a couple of big unknowns. Yeah, obviously the annexation is going to be a big issue for potentially 2025 and after. I don't know when we'll actually know what's going to happen, because even if the city approves 100% of them, there's going to be some remonstrances, probably a lot. Probably some of them will be successful. Some of those, but not all, will be litigated. There will be some that may be successful and not be litigated, like the islands, which don't really have a litigatable issue. So, yeah, who knows? But that is certainly an area of concern. I guess my general thought is that right now, I mean, we are never going to feel like we have so much of a surplus that we can just distribute it to employees. We will never be in that position. But right now, we do have the backstop of ARPA on our revenues. So I feel like there's no better time than now to bite the bullet and do it. It's not we're always going to be taking a risk. Like I said, we're always going to be extending beyond where we are comfortable. But I kind of feel like there's no better time than the present. We have the study. Its data is fresh. Let's get as close to that as we can. So I'm throwing out $1.7 million of salary.
Okay.
Again, we may reduce that over the next month, discussion and analysis, but let's at least get that in advertisement so we have that kind of headroom.
Okay.
Well, I just threw that out. That's not definitive.
I mean, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I just need.
Yeah. Do you need a motion on this or is it just for, okay.
It's just a consensus if this is what you want me to move forward with. And then Bree and Kathy and I will work on making sure that those numbers are placed into the budget and we advertise. And then we can always, come back and say, okay, here we are. Hopefully by then I'll have all of the employee information back, and then we'll have a whole lot better numbers.
Okay.
Council.
Well, yep. Go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
He froze.
Nope.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, you froze up there for a second.
Oh, am I back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm getting that dreaded your internet connection is unstable message. Council, I'll make a motion to make a non-binding sense of the council statement to allow the auditor's office and the council and the council office to advertise $1.7 million in salaries plus the associated benefits for the purposes of advertising only to address the salary recommendations of the WIS study.
Second. Okay, who has any questions or comments on this motion? Mr. Iverson.
Yeah, this is a little bit ago, but I felt like it's important to say that I agree with Mr. Spoonmore that the deputies, if we're going to be talking about electeds and deputies, the deputies count. And there's such economic headwinds right now that I would feel really awkward putting in electeds. That's my 2 cents.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, well, we've certainly got some things to discuss and figure out on that for sure. Anything further? I'll just say thank you to Mr. McKim for this motion. I fully support it and hope the rest of you will as well. All right, if there's nothing further from council, we'll take a roll call vote to accept this motion presented by Mr. McKim.
Councilor Munson?
Yes.
Councilor Hawk?
Yes. Yes.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Councilor
McKim. To watch the city at the same time.
Councilor McKim?
Yes.
Councilor Deckard?
Yes.
Councilor Spoonmore?
Yes.
Councilor Iverson?
Yes.
Councilor Welts?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Okay, very good. Does that, I think that just about does it. Am I missing anything, Michelle?
I don't think so. I know that we will have a rather large agenda come September the 28th, yeah. But maybe I can have some more and better, at least an update by then before the October meeting so that we can see where we're at.
Perfect. Yes, Ms. Hawk.
Yes, I am a bit concerned about the chief deputies because we have to make sure that either we're choosing to do the percentage or we're doing the other, because otherwise we're going to end up paying the chief deputies more than the elected officials. Well, I mean, I just think we have to look at it. I just want to see the numbers.
Agreed, that would not be appropriate.
Well, yeah. Right. And I think that's one of the things that I wanted to look at was that WIS said that it would be more beneficial for the chief deputies to be 90% of the electeds. 90%. So,
that's what I was
asking how you wanted me to treat them. So,
yeah, they were definitely not happy with our grid for the chief deputies.
Yeah, I'm not. So.
And we have to remember that the elected official does not receive longevity.
Yes.
And so if you do like 1% of that, then that chief deputy would probably, if we would determine they would not be receiving it during the time they were chief deputies, I think that we need to make certain that they are still counting the years to when they're no longer a chief deputy and just a rank and file employee, that they still are able to count those years for their longevity when they step out of being chief deputy.
Yep. That's the point.
Yep.
That's just my thought.
Yeah, good thought. And yeah, we've definitely got some more to discuss on that for sure. But I think we've got a good framework here to work on. And we've made some good progress over these last 5 meetings. Anything further from council before we're not going to recess this time. We're actually going to adjourn, believe it or not. So, all right. Well, I just want to thank you all for a really productive last 5 meetings. It's such a pleasure and an honor to work with all of you, and appreciate all the great work. So thanks so much. And this meeting is officially adjourned. We'll go watch the city now. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.